This week on LTC News, more opportunities for fun downtown.
Kerouac Park was identified as a possible location to introduce some new playground structures.
An update on UMass Lowell sports.
Our first year of full NCAA Division I eligibility.
And an interfaith gathering.
And instead of sharing the stories, I would rather share the common thread that ran through them.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. This past January, the city kicked off a year-long open space and recreation planning process. Public input is welcome at meetings and via an online survey. There are several open space improvements already in the works.
Right now, the National Park is working with the original landscape architect of this park to think about possibly redesigning some of the landscaping that we have existing on site, sprucing it up, introducing some new things, maybe pruning back a bit to add some more visibility into the park.
Feedback from the January kickoff meeting identified a need for playground structures for kids downtown.
Kerouac Park was identified as a possible location to introduce some new playground structures, and we're in the process of trying to figure out what will work here. We know that we have the Kerouac Memorial here and want to be respectful of that, but we have some really nice open space next to this monument, and so we're looking at more structural, sculptural, natural elements as far as playground structures, and not something that is full of primary colors that you see in some of the other spots that we have across the city. We're shooting for right now a 2019 installation if we can get community support for it, and once we get that, move forward towards finding some funding opportunities to help us support that.
Meanwhile, the city's Cultural Affairs and Special Events Office will apply for a Commonwealth Places grant to bring a series of outdoor activities and a retail incubator to Kerouac Park starting this summer.
So we're creating some hammock spaces, some patio swings, some outdoor game tables, a small little stage. We're working with the Economic Development Department, hopefully also in partnership with E4All and the Merrimack Valley Small Business Center, to create a small structure here that most likely will be like a greenhouse kind of thing, but not to grow food in it, but to grow businesses in it. So with the idea to say, hey, if you have a great retail idea that could work in downtown, you can try it out here for a week or two, and if that works, then we work with you to help you with your business and find a space for you in downtown.
Commonwealth Places is a state initiative that matches funding with money raised by a community via the civic crowdfunding app called Patronicity. The city hopes to raise $50,000 for Kerouac Park activities. There are also improvements slated for the Riverwalk downtown, a joint project between the city and the Lowell National Historical Park. They'll break ground this fall on a long-awaited extension.
We're very excited about what we're calling Riverwalk Phase 2, which is going to extend this Riverwalk about a quarter mile behind me, underneath the bridge, come up with an American with Disabilities Act compliant ramp up to a kind of outlook, a 10-foot cantilevered outlook at the confluence of the Concord and Merrimack rivers. And then the other component of that project will be a bridge, a pedestrian bridge that crosses the Concord River to get you right in front of Lowell Memorial Auditorium.
With all of the canals and riverwalks, we've been building them piece by piece as funds are available. Since the 1990s, we've invested over $55 million in these walkways, with about 2/3 of that coming from federal sources and 1/3 from state and local. And this quarter-mile extension is what we could do with the funds that we were able to get.
We always wanted to connect it to Lowell Memorial Auditorium so that people could kind of do a complete loop around the Riverwalk so that people could commute between different important places like the Tsongas Center, like the ball field, like all the mill buildings, UMass Lowell. We want to connect them all. We're really proud of the Riverwalk because it's one of the few places that the urban dwellers of Lowell can really get into green space. They see the river, they see the trees, they see the water, and that's not something that people can do on a day-to-day basis in every city. We really want to connect more people to that.
The Cox Bridge spans the Merrimack River at Bridge Street, connecting downtown with Centreville. As part of the Lowell Heritage Partnership's Waterways Vitality Initiative, the bridge will be lit every night starting on May 5th. The kickoff celebration begins at 6 p.m. and the lights go on at 8:30. Gathering spots will be at Kerouac Park and Veterans Park on the Centreville side of the river.
I need a selection of the city manager. I need a motion to select the city manager.
The big news of the March 27th City Council meeting was the unanimous selection of State Senator Eileen Donahue to be Lowell's first female city manager. Before the meeting, 2 other impressive candidates were interviewed by the council, but Donahue was the council's clear choice. Donahue knows the city very well, as she previously served as a city councilor and mayor. She believes that economic development is key to moving Lowell forward, and attracting new businesses to Lowell will be one of her top priorities.
This is a great city, but I think our best days are yet to come. I truly believe that.
The council appointed Michael Geary as acting city manager until Senator Donahue settles into her new post. The zoning subcommittee reported that it is working out the zoning requirements for marijuana stores in Lowell. The state will approve the applications of selected companies by July 1st, so the city needs to get its regulations in place by then. At the April 3rd City Council meeting, the council voted to fund a new supervisor position in the Health and Human Services Department to oversee Lowell's community opioid outreach program. The program is 3 years old and has grown to the point where a supervisor is needed to coordinate all its activities. Downtown parking spaces, prices, and fines were a big topic at this meeting, with increases suggested. No decisions were made, and the issue was sent back to the Finance Subcommittee for clarification. And finally, the school department's mobile video production van was funded in the amount of $156,435, with funds given to the city by Comcast as part of its cable TV franchise contract with the city. Lowell High students will have the opportunity to learn how to use the van and its high-tech equipment. You can watch the City Council meetings live on Channel 99 or on demand at ltc.org. On Sunday, March 25th, the Greater Lowell Interfaith Leadership Alliance held its annual Interfaith Gathering Against Violence at Temple Emmanuel of the Merrimack Valley. This year's topic, If My Neighbor is a Martian, What Should I Do? Leaving our comfort zones to overcome our fears. The goal each year is to find commonalities and dispel misconceptions about different religions and spiritual traditions.
May respect for all our differences enhance our common ties. We will rise all together, we will rise.
And I found out that many of the staff came from very small towns in Pennsylvania, and many of them had never ever met anyone who was Jewish. And so when they knew that I was coming, it was with some expectation. Would I speak English? Would I look like them? Would I have a horn or a tail? What would I be like? Would I be like a normal human being? They didn't know. They had no idea at all.
Guru Nanak Dev, founder and first guru of Sikhism, composed the basis of his theology. There is one supreme being, the eternal reality, the creator, without fear and devoid of enmity, immortal, never incarnated, self-existent, known by grace through the true guru.
We had a great group, diverse, a breadth of life experience. And instead of sharing the stories, I would rather share the common thread that ran through them. And that was person-to-person interaction. As we broke down our own barriers, or learned about somebody else, or as we were the person, whether we were the protagonist or the friend of a protagonist of a story, the commonality was human contact, was getting to know another person, was letting go of a prejudice, was learning and experiencing with another person.
From Hillel in the Talmud, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary.
Zoroastrian from Sheast, not Sheast. Do not do unto others whatever is injurious to yourself.
May each one of us discover the beautiful in each of us as we go out from this place, this day, in the coming week, in the coming months, in the coming year, to spread love and goodwill, to work for justice and peace within our communities and within our world.
The Concord River whitewater rafting season has begun. If you're adventuresome, you won't want to miss this exciting experience in downtown Lowell. A portion of the proceeds benefit the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. The 3-hour trips leave at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. on weekends in April and May.
Well, you're running a short section of the Concord River in downtown Lowell. It goes right through the center of the city, which is pretty unique. It's an amazing river. It changes levels throughout the spring, which is wonderful. We work with Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust to get this river, to get this rafting trip out, which is kind of fun. It's a unique way to see Lowell. It's a great section of whitewater. It's fun to be on the raft or fun to be in the river, as you know.
When you're rafting, you get a really unique opportunity to kind of go along that whole section that's going to be the Concord River Greenway. And so you put in on the Lawrence Street section, and as you go down, you'll see where it's going to cross over to Centennial Island and follow along and meet up with Jolene Dubner, and then eventually cross over again. And right the last set of rapids you do, you're coming out on our Davison Street section of the Concord River Greenway.
As you can see, our cameraman went into the water, which is fairly common. The raft guides are quick to pull you back into the boat as safety is of utmost concern. UMass Lowell spring sports are in full swing after the Riverhawks wrapped up their fall and winter seasons. We spoke with UMass Lowell Athletic Director Dana Skinner about successes so far and what we can look forward to this spring.
Well, it's been an interesting year, our first year of full NCAA Division I eligibility, having gone through the 4-year transition period. This was the first time all of our teams were eligible for postseason play. We had some highlights during the course of the year. We actually hosted 2 America East Conference championships this year, one in field hockey and in men's soccer. Our soccer team actually played in the conference championship game. Lost to a very good team, but the team did well to finish second place.
Home! Is it in? Yes! Third time's the charm! Riverhawks with the upset!
In addition to those successes, Paul Hogan won the America East Conference Men's Cross Country Championship. Paul is the first ever athlete to compete in the NCAA Division I championships in track and field. So we were thrilled to see Paul go on in advance and represent our institution on a national level. In addition to that, in the winter, our men's track team finally took out Albany. Albany had won 12 consecutive conference championships, and our men's track team defeated the field and won the America East Conference Championship in track and field. So they enjoyed a great season as well. So competitively, the winter was, we had some great moments during the winter. I think probably one of the most impressive things that's happened here at UMass Lowell during the past, our first year of eligibility has been setting some attendance records. We led Hockey East in attendance again for the 3rd consecutive year. We drew over 4,000 people for a school day women's basketball game. And we also attracted almost 1,800 people for a lacrosse game that we had against the #1 team in the country, Albany. They came in here a week ago, and it was an exhilarating crowd, and we actually played awfully well against the best team in the country. Lost 13-6, but played exceptionally well. So it's been a good year. We're anxious to get our teams home here in the spring. We need the snow to go away. It's been a very difficult spring, so Our baseball team has not been out at Lowell yet. In fact, none of them have played a home event at this point. They've been doing a lot of traveling, but we're excited for all of the programs to get rolling in the spring. Continuing lacrosse. Lacrosse has had, both men's and women's lacrosse have had an opportunity to play at home, and are both competing at a higher level than they did a year ago, and that's sort of the goal right now. We have a lot of work to do at UMass Lowell competitively, but the teams have improved, and we expect to keep climbing the ladder. Everybody else keeps trying to win out there, so it's a tough climb, but it's an exciting one.
The civil war in Syria began in 2011, and now 7 years later, over 6 million people have been displaced, and additional millions have fled the country. One local resident felt compelled to do something to help. Al Gentili, a musician, a writer, and former anchor at LTC News, has organized People Power for Syria, a musical festival benefit to be held on April 14th at Thirsty First in downtown Lowell from noon to closing.
Given the fact that there's been over 500,000 casualties and millions of people displaced alone makes this to me something that anybody with any sort of moral compass would act upon. It's very clearly one of the worst humanitarian situations in modern history, and we're all people. One of the driving forces of Lowell's culture, which is our music scene, has also come to step up and be a part of this mission. So for me, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring the best of Lowell together, to do the best that we can for people that needs it so badly.
There will be plenty of opportunities to donate funds throughout the one-day festival. The total amount collected will be forwarded to New Day Syria, which is a nonprofit, volunteer-based organization that sends supplies, food, and medicine directly to Syria and to refugees in need abroad. Thirsty First is also donating 10% of their proceeds from the entire event. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Bill Martin, candidate for State Senate, 1st Middlesex District.
Good evening, everyone. I am Chris Scott, the Enterprise editor at The Sun. I'm glad to be back for another edition of Sunspot. With me is former City Councilor and former Mayor Bill Martin. Bill, thank you for coming in.
Chris, great to be with you today.
We've known each other for a long time, and I think I covered your first campaign for state rep back in 1998.
So your memory's pretty good. It was 1998. It was to fill the seat from retiring Rep. Ed LeLasher. It was my first run for public office in 98, 20 years ago now.
Yep.
So a pretty spirited race. Representative Dave Nangle, who's the current rep, won. Ran a good campaign. I thought I ran a good campaign too, but not quite good enough.
Only about 200 votes, right?
He beat me by about 200 votes, right. And there was some other very good candidates in that field. Steve Geary was in that race, Rita Mercier, Karen Theodoris, a Tewksbury School Committeeman by the name of Scott Consall. So, but it really, in spite of not having won, I had a lot more positive feeling coming out of that race than negative, and you just get humbled, I think, by the way people help you. You know, a lot more people step up and help than disappoint you, and I think because of that sort of a spirit that was generated in that race, I decided to stick with it, and I ran for the city council next year.
And you served 18 years, correct?
16
okay.
years, yep, 16 years.
Including one mayoral term?
And mayor in 06 and 07.
So you have your portrait at City Hall?
Yes.
So now you'd like to trade City Hall for the State House, and that's what brings us here today. You are a candidate for the 1st Middlesex District Senate seat.
That's correct.
Technically, that seat still has a representative in the state Senate, and that is Eileen Donahue. But as we know, she was recently elected to be city manager, and now we're just waiting for her to resign.
Right. So, you know, I expect that would be very soon. Congratulations to Eileen Donahue on her selection as the city manager of Lowell. I served with Eileen for many years on the city council, and congratulations to the city council. I think they made a great pick, and I think the future of Lowell is very bright with Eileen as the city manager.
Looking at the way this race is shaping up compared to that race that you were in 1998, there are a lot of heavy hitters in that race, and it was a crowded field. And this is looking to be a crowded field as well. It looks like you're going to have current city councilor Rodney Elliott. It looks like you're going to have current city councilor Ed Kennedy, although I still don't have a definitive from him, but I think for all intents and purposes he's in. You're in. There's an AFL-CIO lobbyist who lives in Belvedere by the name of John, Mr. Drinkwater, I forget his first name.
I think it's John. Yeah.
John, he's in. And then on the Republican side, you have John McDonald,
right,
who's been active in some city affairs and veterans issues. So what kind of race are you anticipating?
So, and I think in many ways it may be like the race in '98. You know, it's going to be, I think, very competitive. You know, certainly people have their bases of support. We could have more candidates. There could be people from the other towns. There are other towns in this race besides Lowell. It's, you know, it's Westford, Dunstable, Tingsboro, Groton, and Pepperell, right? As well as
I always have to look up all the communities.
So I know them. I know them.
Yeah.
And you know, so it'll be, you know, I think very much a similar type campaign. I plan to run, you know, a lot of door-to-door canvassing. I think that, to me, is the best way to campaign. I think that's why I did as well as I did in '98, and also carried me through my council elections. You know, as time goes on, you get better known, and you might do less of that. But you know, I didn't run for re-election 2 years ago, so I've been out 2 years. I think I'm well known in Lowell, and people know what I stand for here, but I've got to get better known in the other communities.
I'd like to ask you what you stand for in just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
I'd just like to go back to the race itself. You talked about going to door to door.
Yeah.
What is your candidacy? What are you going to base your candidacy on? You're a Lowell guy,
Yeah.
but it's a pretty big district that goes all the way out to Westford and Dunstable and points beyond.
Right. So, you know, based in Lowell, for me, it's always been about, you know, economic development, economic opportunity for our citizens, not just in Lowell, but in the surrounding communities. And I look at, you know, Lowell as sort of the center maybe of an economic ecosystem, if you will. And so some of the surrounding communities can benefit if Lowell does well. Some of them do quite fine on their own, right? It's a little different world now. You know, if you look 50 years ago, probably people from some of those towns commuted into Lowell to work. Right now, they might come into Lowell just for entertainment, you know, for a restaurant or a movie or dinner. But I think there is economic opportunity here but it's not for everybody, you know. Not everybody is shared in our economy here, and I think we just need to concentrate on making this an economy that works for everybody. And I've got some ideas about that. We can get into that a little bit if you want.
I know during your city council years, we talked a number of times about you running again for state rep.
Yeah.
For that state rep seat that Dave Nangle occupied. But you said that was just never in the cards. You just didn't want to have another bite at that apple. What made this race so attractive? Was it an open seat, or do you think you would have? Well, you would have gotten in somewhere along the line.
I mean, I think if it's not just about political opportunity, right? It's about where you can make a difference. And so if you look at running against an incumbent representative, you got to look and see what job they're doing, right? So, you know, I think Representative Nangle served this district well. He does a good job for the city. And so there's really no reason for me to sort of challenge that. You know, here, you're right, it is an open seat, so that, I mean, I wouldn't have run against Eileen Donahue. I had no interest in doing that. My first vote as a city councilor back in 2000 was for Eileen Donahue for mayor. Okay, so, and I've always worked well with her as a councilor, as a mayor, as a senator. But there's going to be a void now. There's going to be a void, and I think we need an advocate for this district in this seat. And I think I could do a good job at that. I think, you know, the professional training I have, you know I'm an attorney. I do a lot of real estate development work and a lot of work with companies that are growing in this area. And so I kind of speak their language and know what their needs are. And I just think we need to recruit more. You know, we have 25 miles away, Cambridge and Boston are thriving. When I was a young lawyer, I represented companies that moved out of Cambridge, out to the 93 area, the 128 area. And now, no one seems to do that, right? Everybody just keeps building higher and higher in Cambridge. And I think if we had the right incentives in place, we might be able to get some of those companies to come to Lowell.
I think Eileen Donahue touched on a little bit of that same philosophy during her interview with the city council for the city manager's job.
Yeah, and I think with the right incentives, you know, I think the city has incentives they can offer, but I think the state could do a little better. the last economic development bill that passed had some incentives in it for companies that were going to move into what's referred to now as commonly gateway cities, right? But only a little bit. You know, if you were going to rehab a mill as affordable housing, there are tons of programs, tons of incentives, and I applaud all those. I've worked on some of those projects, and those, by and large, have been good for Lowell. But we need jobs, not just housing in the city. So if you were going to convert a mill to a small little manufacturing space, you'd have a lot less economic incentive than you would if you were building a housing project.
I think you said earlier that you're anticipating a spirited race. Now, I go back to your last several years on the city council, particularly when Bernie Lynch was the city manager, and councilor relations weren't always the best back then. And I think I recall having conversations with you and with Councilor Elliott and with Councilor Kennedy. I don't think the three of you were always on the same page when it came to the management of City Hall and the performance of City Manager Bernie Lynch. Now, I'm not looking to rehash old history, but it seems that that would all play into, as you described, a spirited race, because I would think that you would really want to try to carve out some differences between yourself, Rodney Elliott, and Ed Kennedy.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, and I think there are differences, and I haven't heard from them, so I don't know what their platforms are, but I know what mine is.
Tell us about your platform.
I mean,
what will be your main three goals?
So we talked about, you know, economic development already. You know, another key thing I think for this district is education funding. I think that's key to every community. You know, and I think we need to do a little bit more. I think the opioid epidemic is really tough in Lowell, but it's touched a lot of families that are close to me. I don't have a lot of answers for that, but I think the state can be supportive with research. I mean, I think we do need to do a better job with treatment protocols. It's kind of catch as catch can. You know, what's the best way to bring people back from addiction and make sure they can still have productive lives and meaningful lives. And I don't have a lot of solutions to that. I don't think anybody does, but the problem is very real, and I think the state certainly has a role, and the state legislature has a role. Funding, yes, but also sort of directing, you know, more regular protocols. I think that's something that you know, you send a son or a daughter here or there, and they might get completely different advice, completely different treatment. And then part of that is we don't know exactly what works, and maybe not the same thing works.
We just have 2 minutes left. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay.
So those are three things, anyway.
Yeah. How much do you think you have to raise?
You know, I'm working on a budget now, but you know,
it's like 30 grand now to run for city council, right?
Yeah.
So I remember when it used to be half that.
Yeah. So I in my race in '98. I raised over $35,000 then.
Wow.
And a lot of my...
For city council?
That was for the state.
Oh, for state. Right.
And then for a lot of the council races, I was over 30s too. So, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, 100,000, 150, you know, somewhere in that range. I think on the low end, if you budget your money wisely, you can do it for less. But if you can get more, it's always better to have resources, you know. Newspaper advertising costs money. It's all advertising, right? It's to get your message known, whether that's, you know, print media, mail, television,
certainly
ads,
don't forget about
social media, you know, so it's really, you know, signs, all that stuff. So at least 100,000, I would think.
Do you have a campaign manager at this point, or
no? I've got the people that have helped me over the years.
Some of those people are,
you know, Treasurer Steve Normandin, my brother Brian out in Kingsborough, you know, certainly my wife and my
former
children.
public official too.
Yeah. So we've got a core group of people, and I'm looking at bringing some younger people in the campaign, perhaps some UMass Lowell students, and we'll maybe get a campaign manager, a day-to-day person out of that group. But I'm not waiting for that. So, you know, I've already been out. I've been talking to folks. I'm here with you. You know, started gathering signatures.
Can we expect a formal announcement or anything like that from you? Or,
I think so. I think, you know...
I mean, this will serve as a formal announcement, but...
I mean, this is the first I've publicly spoken about this.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate
that. You know, and you just called yesterday, you know, but certainly I'd like to have, articulated positions and things like that. With that, we have when we have more time to get into that. So
terrific. Well, it will be a fun race to watch and to read about. I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah.
I wish you luck. I've always enjoyed working with you. You've always been upfront and honest, and we'll look for that going forward.
I plan to continue that in the Senate.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 899, online at ltc.org, on Roku at LTC Lowell, or get the link on Facebook. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.